Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
A little bit of throttle, roll off that.
Hold on, man. You gotta slow down.
So let's give it a shot. We're gonna go first to third. So there's first gear, a little bit of throttle, roll.
No, okay. Hey guys, original link to the video, top of the description, preemptive like, Tedward. I'll do a subscribe to, why not? I can't drive manual, never tried. I have driven cars, like the current car I have, a Volvo, that like I can push this thing to the right, and then I can go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sport, which I guess is 6. And I've tried it before, and I feel like I'm destroying my car. And clearly, it's the 1 you use when you're just starting, and then the 2. So driving manual, guys, it is essentially just like knowing when to switch up to the higher gear, and knowing when to switch down to the lower gear, and using the clutch somehow.
So let's give it a shot. We're gonna go first to third. So there's first gear, a little bit of throttle, roll off that clutch, nice and smooth.
I'm already lost. The clutch
Revs up to about 3,500 RPM, clutch in, second gear. Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today is the day you learn how to drive a manual transmission.
So do you look at the RPM to switch rather than the speed?
A stick shift. So let's start with the
Guess it'd be the
absolute
same
basics,
thing.
because maybe you've been out in a stick shift before and it has frustrated you to no end, or you frustrated your teacher to the point where you no longer wanted to learn, or they no longer wanted to teach you. But this video is geared for those of you who want to learn, who want to get an idea of what it is before you even get out there on the road. So it's not going to be so troublesome or confusing. And just
To be honest, it just helps that his steering wheel is on, I was about to say, the correct side of the car, and people would have gotten mad. On the left side of the car, even though it makes my brain less messed up so I can learn easier.
it's like flying the road, so it's not going to be so troublesome or confusing. And just like flying airplanes, they always say the worst classroom is the airplane. So you want to learn a little bit on the ground first. So let's do a little bit of ground school. So first, let's just take a look at what this is. The difference between an automatic transmission and a manual transmission is simply that you are the one shifting the gears. The car is not selecting them for you. So you are in control of the transmission. And that means you have some extra things, right? We've got a clutch pedal right here, a brake, and a throttle.
I like his voice and demeanor. It makes me feel comfortable.
Means you have some extra things, right? We've got a clutch pedal right here, a brake, and a throttle. Pretty standard stuff. But this clutch is what separates that engine from the wheels. Your engine's basically only job is to spin a flywheel. So imagine this is a flywheel. As you rev the engine, the flywheel will spin at whatever RPM the engine speed is at. So if it's at idle, it's maybe spinning at 800 RPM. If it's at red line, maybe the engine speed. As you rev the engine, the flywheel will spin at whatever RPM the engine speed is at. So if it's at idle, it's maybe spinning at 800 RPM. If it's at red line, maybe it's spinning at 6,500 RPM. And then you've got your transmission, which connects the engine to the wheels. And between that is a clutch. And the only thing this pedal does is separate the engine from the transmission.
So what happens if you try to change gears without pressing down the clutch? Will it just not let you?
That's it. That's all it does. So that means if you're going 80 miles an hour on the highway in top gear and you're cruising along, you hit this clutch pedal.
Top gear. That's where that comes from?
An hour on the highway in top gear and you're cruising along, you hit this clutch pedal. All you've done is separate the engine from the transmission.
So pretty much the clutch puts you in neutral?
When you pull that pedal back up, clutch closes, and you're connected back to the flywheel. And then our job as a driver is to match the speeds of these two things. That's it. And just like playing an instrument, this can be a frustrating endeavor because there's a lot of timing and balance
I'm not
involved.
frustrated.
But I assure you, you can do this. It is not that complicated, and people have been doing this for a very long time. So before we even start the car, let's just familiarize ourselves with the gear selector. So we have a typical H pattern gear shift here, and your gear selector will often tell you where each gear is. So first, second, third, fourth, so on. Reverse is different on a lot of different cars. So in a lot of Volkswagens, you might push this gear selector down as a lockout so that we don't accidentally put it in reverse when you're trying to drive forward, down, and over. And in this
See, what happens if you accidentally do that? Do you just die? Obviously not.
Honda, accidentally put it in reverse when you're trying to drive forward, down, and over. And in this Honda, it's just a good over and down. And some, like the BMW, again, the lockout is not a T-grip or a push down. It's just a good thwap over to the side. So
guys, is there no hydraulic sort of connection between what he's moving and the engine movement? Or is he literally moving the thing in and out of it, moving the clutch? It doesn't matter. It's not important.
T-grip or a push down, it's just a good thwap over to the side.
Wow.
So that's the deal. And when you start your manual transmission, you always want to make sure it's in neutral first. And that's why most modern cars have a clutch interlock, meaning that if I try to start this car, it's not going to start. I cannot start this car until I have put my foot on this clutch to make sure that that engine and transmission are separated, because what can happen is if you leave the car in first gear, which a lot of folks do, they don't always trust their emergency brake. And another way to secure your vehicle, and is like a backup step, is to put it in first or reverse.
I sort of instinctively press the brake pedal as I'm turning on a car. So I just switch that with the clutch.
First gear, which a lot of folks do, they don't always trust their... What can happen is if you leave the car in first gear, which a lot of folks do, they don't always trust their emergency brake. And another way to secure your vehicle, and is like a backup step, is to put it in first or reverse. So if you were to engage that starter while it's in first or reverse and there's no clutch interlock and you have your foot off this pedal, the car will actually lunge forward or backwards because you are turning the engine, you're turning that transmission. So I like to do two things when I start the car. Number one, foot on the clutch to make sure that it'll actually start. Two, a neutral jiggle, your first neutral jiggle, because if it's in first, oh, it's in first.
Neutral jiggle, I like
neutral,
that.
good to go. Foot on the brake as well. And we have started our vehicle. Now you don't want to sit with your foot on that clutch pedal. Not great for the throw-up bearing, for the longevity of your car. You don't want to do that, but you also don't want to just pop off that clutch, because in the event that maybe you did forget to neutral jiggle and it was in gear, you've just stalled the car, if you're lucky, because you had your foot on the brake. So after...
How damaging is one of those to your car? In other words, how many times would you have to do that? Like, if you were to just keep doing that, how many times before it just breaks, I wonder?
After I've started a vehicle, you've just stalled the car, if you're lucky, because you had your foot on the brake. So after I've started a vehicle, typically what I do another neutral jiggle, double check, and then I leave my foot on that brake, and then I peel off the clutch. So that way, in the event that I was parked up against a wall or in front of a CVS or something, and the car did happen to be in gear, it will stall itself out by hitting that brake versus jumping forward into a pedestrian or into something that's going to damage the car. So just a little trick. And then once you know that that clutch is out and the car ain't moving, then you can put your foot off that brake and we can rely on our parking brake. So first things first, we want to get familiar with getting the car rolling. But before you even get rolling, we want to know, how do you stop this vehicle? Okay, so if you are moving, it's always good to know how to abort a procedure before you start the procedure.
I don't like how the brake pedal is just as large as... I'm used to, like, the gas pedal looks the same, but I'm used to a much, like, more rectangular, larger brake pedal.
If you're rolling, are moving, it's always good to know how to abort a procedure before you start the procedure. If you're rolling and suddenly you go, oh my goodness, we need to stop the car. Clutch, brake.
Brake,
ready?
clutch.
Clutch, brake. and you can stop, because basically when you put in that clutch, you're separating the engine from the transmission with that clutch, and then you can come to a complete stop. First of all, putting the car in gear, we're going to engage the clutch to shift, and a good rule of thumb, never touch this stick shift until your foot is fully on the clutch. That's going to prevent some grinding, it's going to prevent some accidents. So just a good rule of thumb while you're getting started, don't even touch this until your foot is on the clutch. So I'm going to put my foot on the clutch, my foot on the brake, or release the parking brake or hand brake, depending on what you've got in the vehicle that you're learning on, and then over and up. Over and up. That's
So there's no park setting. You know, the park, drive, reverse, neutral, or, but there's usually also a parking brake. So the parking brake is, so you can't park your car and exit without applying the parking brake, whereas it's more of an option in automatic.
first gear, and the first thing we're going to do, over and up. Over and up. That's first gear. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to feel out where this clutch catches. So I'm going to take my foot off the brake, and I can start pulling my foot off that clutch pedal and find out where it catches. I'm not touching the throttle at all. I don't want you to touch the throttle yet. Okay? And now we're rolling. This is nice because we're on flat ground. You want to find somewhere flat. Then to stop, we're going to put our foot on the clutch, come to a stop. All right, we want to get rolling again. Off the brake, start peeling off that clutch. Want to find somewhere flat. Then to stop, we're going to put our foot on the clutch, come to a stop. All right, we want to get rolling again. Off the brake, start peeling off that clutch. You feel where it comes up, and then there we go. Good.
Still kind of confuses me why you can't just press the brake.
Stuff. Hands on the wheel, always important. Good thing to do. Clutch, brake, stop. Okay. That might take a little while for you to figure out. And sorry, it didn't stall out. That is just the auto start stop. So that might take a little while for you to figure out, because you're basically taking a moving object, that spinning flywheel, and trying to spin the transmission with this clutch. And you're trying to mate the two. So you're slipping that clutch a little bit in order to match the speed. So clutch in, first gear, foot off the brake, starts to catch, and slowly roll off that clutch. Let's try it one more time. Foot on the clutch, first gear, foot off the brake, find where it starts to catch, and roll off. And there you go. That clutch. Let's try it one more time. Foot on the clutch, first gear, foot off the brake, find where it starts to catch, and roll off. And there you go. And then we're coming up to a tree. We want to go stop. Okay,
Turn the steering wheel.
So now you know how to do that.
I know that part.
And we can do the exact same thing in reverse. So in this case, reverse is here.
Foot off the clutch, foot off the brake, foot on the gas, crash.
Foot off the brake, and then start rolling off the clutch. I've got a rear view camera, so I can...
Whoa.
And then start rolling. In this case, reverse is here. Foot off the brake, and then start rolling off the clutch. I've got a rear view camera, so I can look like this, but we should probably also do that. And then to stop, I'm going to put my foot on the clutch, foot on the brake, back to neutral, and we have stopped the vehicle. Okay, so this step, this is a step I want you to get used to, because it's really important to understand how to peel off that clutch and get the car rolling without any throttle just yet. We don't need to use the throttle yet. But this is us going very, very slowly on flat ground. When you're driving in traffic, when you're leaving a stop sign, you're going to need a little more juice than just rolling off the clutch.
I'm not ready for the juice yet.
This is going to help you. Stop sign, you're going to need a little more juice than just rolling off the clutch like this. But this is going to help you understand exactly how it feels and what it's like, because it's not just a off the clutch and you're rolling. It's a find the catch point and then peel off as it starts to move. And you don't want to...
Anyone in the comments who thinks I couldn't handle this, all right, it's great. You memorized another pedal. I could do that. I will do that.
Ride that clutch. You don't want to sit there and then peel off as it starts to move. And you don't want to ride that clutch. You don't want to sit there and hold your foot on it because that's going to wear the clutch prematurely. So now we're on a little bit of a hill and I want to get this car moving. So I'm going to need to use a little bit of throttle to get it off the line at a reasonable rate, right? We're not just going to crawl into traffic. We want to go a little quicker. So I'm going to put my foot on the clutch into first gear and then I'm going to add a little bit of throttle, maybe about 1200 RPM, and I'm going to.
So you have to put your foot on the clutch before you go into a first gear, and you have to put your foot on the clutch before you brake.
Slip the clutch until we're moving. And I don't want to slip it for too long because now I'm adding throttle. So there we go. Just a little bit of throttle and we're off.
Okay, that makes sense because the fact that he's adding a bit of throttle means that it's going to it's going a little faster in the engine. And so you want to just get to the point, I guess.
And you can start learning how to brake within the realm of stalling the car. So you don't have to put your foot into the clutch every time you want to brake. Because if I'm at, let's say, 2,000 or 3,000 RPM and I'm cruising like this, I can slow down. But as long as I don't stall it out, which means like bring it below idle, then I can do that. But if I want to come to a complete stop, clutch in and we're good. Okay. So now we're going to shift for the first time.
Oh, God.
I want you to learn how to shift into second gear. So we're going to go clutch first, a little bit of throttle, balance that clutch, off we go. And then in order to shift into second gear, we need to clutch in, hand on the stick, second, and off we go. Now we're in second gear. We're moving a little faster at a lower RPM. That's the ticket. That's why we even have a transmission to begin with, because we need.
So if you stay in second gear and you're coming to like a red light to stop and you don't go to first gear before you stop, does that mean the car will stall at a higher RPM than it would if you were already in first gear?
You need to learn how to move faster economically, because this engine doesn't rev to 100,000 RPM. It only revs to 6,500 RPM. Okay, so now we're going to pull into traffic. This is the big stressor, right? Our blinker is on, our clutch is in, first gear, a little bit of throttle, roll off that clutch, off we go, clutch in. Now what you're noticing is I'm not just ripping it into second gear, because this is a machine. It's all mechanical. Things have to be synchronized and moving correctly. And that means listening to the car. So your transmission will actually even feel a little different when it's cold, because it's metal, and metal expands and contracts and has operating temperatures that it prefers.
Don't confuse me.
So what you're noticing, I'm not just ripping it into second gear. I am allowing it to slip into second gear appropriately. So now you've seen first and second gear. Now we got to go for a third. Third gear is the tricky one for a lot of new manual drivers, because this is where you don't want to mess up. You don't want to hit fifth and bog the car down. You don't want to hit first and money shift the car, meaning that you're going to rev it beyond red line. Not good. Okay, so here's a trick for figuring out your H pattern. A lot of manual transmissions, they have a centering spring, right? So your centering spring is what keeps that right in the middle.
They couldn't have made it a more of like a diagonal V shape instead of just like 1, 2, 3, so it's more obvious.
Now, first gear typically is over. You got to push that spring over and forward. Third gear is often.
I know what he's gonna say. So, since it naturally wants to go back to the middle, the thing, the shaft. God. So just kind of like don't force it. Just like pull it out of the gear, let it go to the middle, and then push up if you want to go second.
Straightforward. Straightforward. So if you're getting lost in the gears, let's say you're going from second to third, and you go, oh no, is that third? Is that fifth? Is that first? Cool it. Back to neutral. Third gear.
So don't force it into, or third gear, sorry.
There you go.
So don't force it into that gear. Pull it out of the gear you're pulling out of, let it go to the middle, and then push it forward. Okay.
Double check that on whatever you're driving because it's not always that straightforward. Not every car is like that, and a lot of cars have very worn centering springs. So just a good rule of thumb is understand, is this third? A lot of cars, third and fourth are basically straightforward and straight back. So let's give it a shot. We're gonna go first to third. So there's first gear, a little bit of throttle, roll off that clutch, nice and smooth. Revs up to about 3,500 RPM, clutch in, second gear. Okay, hands back on that wheel because driving is the most important part of driving. And now we're gonna go for third. We're gonna clutch in, third gear. All right, and now you're not getting lost in the gears. So now you know how to go up through the gears, but what about going down through the gears? So if we wanted to go from third to second, we can't simply clutch, shift, and dump the clutch. You feel that drag, that big drag?
You have to go down first.
That's because we didn't rev match, because the engine was at a lower RPM than the wheels called for, essentially. So this means that we want to give a little bit of throttle. This is where finesse comes into play, and timing, because we want to give a little bit of throttle on the way down. So in order to downshift, we want to go third to second here. We're going to go clutch in, rev second, out of the clutch, okay? Not on the way down. So in order to downshift, we want to go third to second here. We're going to go clutch in, rev second, out of the clutch, okay? Not perfect. I'm slowing it down for you here. Second to third. Got car slowing down, so we want to, let's say we want to go back to second gear. Giving it that blip. And we're in. And this is what you're going to do every time you downshift. So let's do two downshifts. We're in fourth gear. We're going to go down to second. So first we're going to go clutch in, rev match to third. Give it a little blip. Now we're going to do another one. We're going to rev match to second.
It just seems odd that you're rev matching down. Seems like I'm not questioning. I'm not questioning that it's correct, but it's just like you're revving it up to get it ready to go down a gear is kind of counterintuitive.
And there you go. You've done it.
I like the
You're
road.
doing a rev
Could use some
match.
paving,
Now,
but
that takes some finesse because every car's a little different. The throttle mapping is different in every car. So sometimes you feel like you give it too many revs, and you'll be able to figure.
Yeah, guys, a big thing I like, if any guys can answer, is why rev match going down a gear? It sounds like you're purposely raising the revolutions to match a lower gear. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Because if the car's lurching forward, you're giving it too much revs because the car's trying to speed up when you let out. If the car is slowing down, then you're not giving it enough revs because you, as a passenger, are lurching forward. Now, let me introduce you to heel-toe downshifting because there are going to be times.
It seems to not be a great car. Like, it seems like a manual isn't a great choice to, like, pick your car that you're, like, going to go on a date on or something. Because how do you even talk to the person? It's just like, nope, don't talk to me. I gotta, you know? Unless you're just really good, then you probably just look cooler.
Slow down and rev match at the same time. See how I did that? You're just using your foot on the brake and then scooting that foot over to match the revs. So to practice this, very simple. We're in third gear. We want to slow down and downshift at the same time. We're going to put our foot on the brake, clutch in, rev, and there we go. So
you need 3 feet. He was braking and revving with the same foot.
we're going to put our foot on the brake, clutch in, rev, and there we go. So if we want to go for that 3-2 downshift while slowing down, we're going to go brake, clutch, little blip off the clutch, and there we go. You've just done a heel-toe downshift. Very simple.
Heel-toe, I did it.
It's really natural over time.
Oh, he said heel-toe from the beginning. I'm just stupid.
It's not difficult to learn. It's just that everybody likes to act like they've figured out the secret sauce. Well, guys, this is just how people have been driving for a century. So,
guys, the issue I have here, let's have, I'll remember it.
You can do it. This is the basics. Maybe we'll do a more advanced tutorial, but I just wanted to get you off the line and show you kind of what it is. And I didn't want to introduce heel-toe downshifting as like a measure to make you overwhelmed or anything. I just want you to know that this is something that you should be doing and that you will be able to do. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.
Great video. He seems like a great guy to learn something like this from, that I'm sure is frustrating for both student and teacher. But the thing I'm confused here is, it's like it seems like there is no point at all in getting a manual car other than just you enjoy driving manual. Like, you enjoy the extra steps. It feels more like you're really working the car, right? You're really driving the car. I get it, but it's sort of like you're just denying the evolution of cars because you think it takes fun. It seems to me like when people got rid of like cranking the car's engine, remember when that was a thing in like old timey 1920s, 30s videos? And people of that time, when they created cars that didn't have to crank, the people are like, no, I'm keeping the crank. That's not real driving. It's like, come on. What? You don't have a crank car? You don't have to crank your engine from the front? You're not really driving. It just feels like that, you know? But it not exactly like that, because that can be quite, I guess, dangerous maybe. And so I get it. I'm not trying to act completely oblivious. It's just there's no, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no obvious benefit to a manual car. It's just, it's more fun for a lot of people that are used to driving that way. That's what I'm getting. Doesn't mean I don't want to learn how to someday, but definitely a little intimidating, I guess. I don't know. Love you guys. Hope you guys are all doing well. Would appreciate any comments, any answers to any of my questions, and I'll see you next video. Bye, guys. Hit all the buttons, subscribe. Bye, guys.